and welcome to today's webinar, which is tips to make your PowerPoint presentation more effective, more engaging, more valuable to your audience. So Peter Dew's my name. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and my passion is helping you find your voice so that you can confidently and effectively share your message, have the impact you want to, engage your customers, your clients, your communities. And we've all sat in a room where the PowerPoint slide has been the dominant feature. And not only the dominant feature, it's also been relied upon by the speaker. And we've heard this term, death by PowerPoint. So I'm going to give you some tips today to try and help you be more confident, more effective, and less reliant on PowerPoint. And when you do use PowerPoint, you'll really make it pop and zing and be of value to the audience. Just a fundamental rule to start with. PowerPoint is not for you, the speaker. PowerPoint's not for me. PowerPoint is for you as an audio visual aid to add value to what I'm saying, to help you understand some of the concepts or the ideas. Now, one of the things that I need to point out up front is doing webinars, doing Zoom, doing Teams is a little bit different than face-to-face PowerPoint. My main focus is on how to use PowerPoint presentations when we're face-to-face. When you're doing a Zoom or a Teams meeting, you're more likely to rely on PowerPoint, as I am today, than you are when you're face-to-face. And you can see I've started this presentation by not sharing my slide. So you're looking at me, you're seeing my non-verbals, I'm trying to engage you, and I'll share the PowerPoint slides as we go on. When you're in the real world, I think grab engagement, build connection, answer the question, what's in it for me from your audience's perspective, and then share your PowerPoint slides when you need to add value to what you're saying. And please, in the comments, in the chat, please type in any questions as we go, and I can answer them at any stage. So tips to make your PowerPoint presentations more effective. Please ask questions as we go, take notes, think about your previous presentation, think about an upcoming presentation. Are you going to adjust your PowerPoint slides? Are you going to reduce the PowerPoint slides? Are you going to change the format to make them more effective? I think with any webinar, any time you give up, really important to focus on what you can do in your own public speaking style, in your own workshops, in your own training. And as I mentioned earlier on, I will record this webinar. So should you wish to review it, it'll be available for you to see in your own time. So why even talk about PowerPoint? Seeing as death by PowerPoint is such a common thing, why use PowerPoint? And the reason is simply some of you are visual learners. Some of your audience, some of your participants will be visual learners, so you need to engage them visually. So here's some data, some statistics from Stanford University. If you talk to people, so you give them some facts, you give them some information, and you talk, there's about a 1 in 10 retention. If you add a visual image, a graph, a picture, a pie chart, some sort of hierarchical image, you're increasing retention to 30%. That's why we add PowerPoint when we're presenting, and it can be the manual type. I don't mind doing a flip chart, and I don't mind doing a whiteboard. In my normal face-to-face training room, you will have the PowerPoint, the screen in the middle, or the plasma TV, and off to one side will be the flip chart, and off to the other side will be a whiteboard. And depending on what happens, I can spontaneously do something, on the whiteboard or write a model on the flip chart. So visual aids have a role to play in helping people retain and remember your messages, the information you're sharing. And of course, the third thing down there is storytelling. That's another webinar. Storytelling along with your visual aids and along with your data. Storytelling is the most powerful thing that will create retention of knowledge, of emotion, of information. Not the purpose of this webinar. This webinar is about how to use PowerPoint as a visual aid more effective. So some common mistakes that people make. They read off the slides one by one, and you can see them. There's bullet points, and they read and they read and they read. This is okay if you are a news reader and you have a teleprompter in front of you and you're reading the news as it appears on the teleprompter. Generally, your presentations, your training needs to be conversational. It needs to go wherever it goes. And reading off slides or following a script is not good presentation skills. So don't read off the slides. Using bullet points, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. We have a saying in the professional speaking industry, using bullet points is shooting your audience to death, one bullet at a time. Putting your audience to sleep, one bullet at a time. Too much noise. Noise, I mean, lots of visual stuff on the slide, really pretty clever slides, but they don't add anything to what the slide is trying to portray. Too many slides. I try and keep my slides to the minimum. Certainly in a one-day face-to-face workshop, you will have more slides when you're doing a visual presentation, but even so, you can still always, at any time, stop share, ask questions, launch a poll. You can go to a whiteboard, share a whiteboard with people, and then you can always go back to your slides. Leaving the slides up. So we put up a slide up on a 5-step process. Here's the 5 steps to success. And then someone asks a question and we go talking about something else. So we're having a discussion about this, but the PowerPoint slide's talking about these 5 steps. And this discussion has progressed and it's no longer, has no relation whatsoever to these 5 steps. So what we have now is a conversation, an audio, an auditory learning discussion that has no link, no connection with this visual tool, this visual aid. So there's a disconnect. What we're talking about and what the slides showing are not the same thing. So don't leave your slide up, bring your slide down. Of course, in the virtual world, that means stop share. Stop share, and then we can have a chat. Creating shadow puppets. This is when the data projector's there and the slides there and the person walks between them and you see all these little images of the shadow that they create, and it becomes quite mesmerizing, especially if you are like me, a visual learner, and I see all the shadow puppets happening. And that's another time to stop sharing or bring your slide down. So when you walk in the middle of the room, you're not creating shadow puppets. So there's common mistakes. If you avoid those, straight away you'll be more effective and more confident in terms of your presentation skills. Don't read from your slides. Please try and get rid of bullet points. Too much visual noise, too many slides, leaving the slides up when a discussion goes somewhere else, creating shadow puppets. You know, when you walk between the camera and the screen and the light projects on you and you get those shadow puppets. So let's start by eliminating some of the noise. And this is your presentation title. Quite a pretty slide, but it's got lots of squiggles and dots and circles and quite visually noisy is the word we would use. One way to work out if you are more distracted by visual noise or auditory noise, if you're annoyed, if you're distracted by mobile phones ringing in the background, so someone's speaking and the mobile phone goes off, if you're distracted by that severely, then you are probably an auditory learner. If the mobile phone going off hardly bothers you, like me, yeah, so what? You know, I'm still focused on you, then I'm probably not an auditory learner. If in watching press conferences, been a lot of COVID press conferences, a lot of election campaign press conferences where I'm speaking, I am the member for parliament, or I'm the candidate, or I'm the minister for health and I'm talking to you, then off to the side, I have people that are not doing the press conference and they nod up and down. Yeah, I call them noddies. And when I see a noddy, I have no idea what they're there for, and I do not hear what the speaker's saying. So that's called visual noise. On a face-to-face presentation, other visual noise, of course, is playing around with your glasses. And the one we often see is the pen. People can do gymnastics. So don't make your slides too noisy. So noise is logos, corporate logos on every slide. I understand some organizations have a branding policy where you must put the corporate logo on every slide. That is clearly, from a public speaking, from an influencing, from an effective presentation perspective, that is stupid. Put your corporate logo on your first slide, put your corporate logo on your last slide. By all means, announce that you're from the Health Department of Western Australia, you're from, you know, the Department of Finance or whatever. Have the logo and your contact details, web pages, www.peterdew.com.au. You won't see that on my slides. Page numbers, slide 5 of 25. Lots and lots of different colors, too much background, fancy fade-ins. These are the, or the curtain reveals. And the actual sounds, the ka-ching, the bloom, bloom, as someone reveals another bullet point. This is all noise and doesn't add to your ability to engage your audience. Just because PowerPoint or Prezi or Keynote builds that functionality doesn't mean you need to use it. Too much background. I saw one presenter where every slide, they had just a really simple word and a nice picture, but then the whole canvas had a background, and the background was of different electrical tools. There was a chainsaw, there was a jigsaw, there was a drill, there was a hammer drill, there was a crosscut saw, there was a band saw, there was some sockets, and it was absolutely amazing. Visual learner me each slide looking to try and find different tools. And once again, the speaker has lost my attention. So the bullet points. So shooting your audience to death with bullet points, putting them to sleep, is when you have 1 bullet point, 2 bullet points, 3, 4, 5, and you talk off those points. There's other ways of displaying your information other than just bullet points. The other thing I mentioned was the fancy reveals. So here's another example of how I may reveal my bullet points. And you probably think I'm really clever. Don't you love that spinning point 1? And let's go to spinning point 2. And some people have a noise with that. The cash register, ka-ching. The blinds, the Venetian blinds that reveal. Very clever, very fancy. Frankly, it is just noise. Now, if you want to use less bullet points, one of the tools I use, not always, but this is an example, is in your PowerPoint slide, in your PowerPoint deck, there is a thing called Smart Art. And Smart Art is simply enables you to put different models into your bullet points. So when you go to SmartArt and say you've got these points, these 5 points I've just revealed, I can put them into a model like that, or I can put them into a beeswax cells, or I can put them into a chronological hierarchy. There's a whole range of different things that SmartArt enables you to do to change your bullet points into a model. I'll show you a few. It's a clever tool. And then, of course, you've got your animations and your transitions. They're all the fancy fade-ins. I don't use them all that much. So here's those 5 points that we had before: bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. If they're logical and point 1 leads to point 2, point 3 leads to point 2 to point 3, point 3 to point 4, point 4 to point 5, I could put it like that. Or if I need to build on them, so the foundation, and I've just realized I've probably got this upside down, the foundation is 0.5, then we need to build up to 0.4, then 0.3, then 0.2, then 0.1. So these are taking your bullet points. I understand sometimes we have those lists of 4 things we want to share, but rather than just having a bullet point and then the words, put them into some hierarchy. Is it a model that is continuous? Is it circular? Is it one where we need to build? One of the models I use to be more effective of public speaking is to prime yourself. And at the base of that model is do your preparation. I think the foundation, the building block of every presentation is doing as much preparation as possible. Then you can start to work on what your message is and understand your audience, but make sure your preparation is really good. I'm going to pause for a moment. I am struggling with a cold. Just checking if there's any chats, any questions. So I have my lemon and honey drink. I am at home. I got my PCR test back yesterday, negative. So it's just a head cold. All right, no comments. Good slides versus bad slides. I think each slide should have maybe one idea, one sort of, one topic, one heading. On that basis, I think that would be a better slide than this one on my right. It's just a little bit too much information there, and it's quite hard to read. It's too small. And another mistake I see mostly in academia, so at universities and at scientific papers, they put up some fantastic research and they say, look, I know that's too small for you to read. However, the point I'm trying to make is if it's too small for your audience to read, don't put it up. Change it, put it in some other format, magnify that bit, that quotation, that confidence limit that you want so people can fully understand the purpose of the slide. Look, I know that's too small for you to read, and that doesn't matter. What I'm getting at is a waste of time, because if we can't read it, we don't know what you're getting at. So good slides versus bad slides. So here's a slide. This is West Australian wheat crops from 2000 to 2006. Any comments on this slide? I'd be quite interested to ask just see what you think about this slide. Quite nice, fairly clean. What mistakes have I made? I guess I've got my website there. I told you not to put my website, and it's page or slide 12 of 75. My gosh, I've only got 10 minutes left and I've still got a significant number of slides to go. Let me show you what I think is a clean slide that pops. what happened in 2003. That is the sole purpose of this visual aid. This slide is to have a discussion about the drought of 2003 and what happened to West Australians' wheat crops. Now, this could be vaccination rates. This could be whooping cough cases. This could be meningitis. This could be superannuation balances of Australians. You know, as long as we now know what we want to talk about, what we're going to discuss is what happened in 2003. That is the key purpose of this slide. Just going back, did you all realise that's what we're going to talk about here? Oh, and there's my corporate logo. I think it's quite a nice logo, CCE, and then a voice coming out, Corporate Communications Experts. And in case you don't know what wheat looks like, there's a picture of wheat. Look at all the nice colours, pink and brown, and then red, and then grey, and then blue, then green, then yellow. Some would argue that this slide is so noisy that you miss the key element I'm trying to illustrate, which is what happened in 2003. Does your PowerPoint slide that you design, does it pop so that people have no doubt what is the purpose of this presentation? What is the purpose of this slide, rather? What is the purpose of this audio visual? Whether you draw it on a flip chart, whether you display it on a slide, needs to come out easily so people get it. All right, graphics and images. I use more graphics and images than I do words, and I certainly don't do bullet points. There are a few sentences and a few triangles that I share. There's those emojis and those cartoons. I try and avoid those, and I try and go with real images. So where can you get images? I use free stock photos. You can go to Unsplash, you can go to Pixabay, freepic.com, also Pexels. And what you do is you put in your image, person looking angry. My wife's writing a blog about de-escalating angry people, and the image that'll go with that blog will be probably two people that have got some angry facial expressions. You can pay for your stock photos, istockphotos.com, depositphotos.com, and you can pay anywhere between $5 and $20 per photo, depending on the size of the photo and what you're going to use it for. If you want to use it for a big banner, then obviously you have to get a higher resolution and it costs you a little bit more. I find that on most times, I can get my images from these 4 places and they're royalty free, so I can use them on my PowerPoint slides in my workshops. Here's some examples. If I want to talk about good active listening, I'd probably use either of those slides, not necessarily both. Of course, the other one we've spoken about is death by PowerPoint. I would use either of those slides, just a heading. I want to talk about what death by PowerPoint is. That's when you do bullet points. That's when you have too many slides. That's when you leave your PowerPoint slide up and you don't bring it down. That image gives me the audio visual prompt to talk about death by PowerPoint, what it looks like, the features, without needing to read off bullet points. Sometimes you can make your own images. Very easy to just create this in PowerPoint. Get rid of nerves, look at excitement. This is one of the things I use around reframing nerves. Rather than get nervous, your hands shake and your pulse increases and your temperature increases a bit, your heart rate beats. Choose excitement, your heart rate increases, your pulse increases, your hands get a little bit sort of tingly. Excitement and nerves, they're almost the same thing. Choose excitement. And that's just a simple graphic, it's not fancy. Then you can go to more fancy tools to create an image that portrays what you want to say. So you can make your own images, your own models, but I wouldn't just do 4 bullet points. And this one is a hierarchical sequential. keep it simple. When I talk about speech structure, some people go around the garden path, others get to the point, and I use the keep it simple, be on, be brief, be seated. And finally, I've spoken about leaving your PowerPoint slides up when you're talking about something else. PowerPoint's down, you're now looking at me. So how do you do that in a face-to-face presentation? And it's the magic of the B button on your keyboard or the magic of the white button. You have my screen again. So when I go to my keyboard and I hit B for black, this is what happens. The slide goes black. Now, you see a black slide now, but in a face-to-face room, you've got nothing on the wall to look at, so you look at me. And now I can engage you and we can have that discussion. Remember, the slide I brought down has no relation to what we're talking about now. Questions come up about something I presented earlier. If I want the slide back, I just hit B for black, and now we can go back to that data. You can buy a Logitech clicker that you can take with you that enables you to walk around the room, and one of the buttons, you just hit that button on the Logitech PowerPoint clicker and that slide goes black. The W does the similar thing, but you may have guessed it is a white screen. So once again, if it's a white wall and it's more appropriate to have a white screen, then by all means use white. If you're using a plasma TV or an LCD TV, a large screen, which I used in Karratha for 3 days last week, the white is more distracting and the black is almost like the TV has been turned off. You can decide. And once again, you just hit the double and it comes back. So in a one-day workshop that I do, so 7 hours, I'd probably use 30 slides. And the slides would be up. People would be looking at my slides no more than 25% of the time. So I'd be using the B button a fair bit as I get people to do things, as I now have discussions around the room. Now, the B button doesn't work all that well in the virtual world. So the B button in the virtual world that lets stop the visual aid is the stop share. And this works in Teams and it works in WebEx. And now if I'm running a meeting and I've got other talking heads, we can now have a discussion one-on-one and I can pin the speaker. So Cecilia, if I was going to ask you a question, I could open up your camera and I could pin you and everyone would see you. So this is a webinar setup with Zoom. With a meeting setup, we would see everyone's heads. So Stephanie and Susie and Cecilia would see all your heads. And this would be the equivalent of the B button in a face-to-face. Part of death by PowerPoint is when you put a PowerPoint slide up and you leave it up for the entire presentation. So there's some tips to improve your PowerPoint presentation. Why use PowerPoint? It increases the retention of people of your message. Common mistakes, bullet points, leaving the slide up, too many slides, noisy slides. Eliminate the noise. You don't need your logo, your www on everyone. Smart Art's one way of converting your points into more models. Graphics and images and the magic of the B key. What have I got coming up for you? Effective use of your voice when public speaking, and even more important on virtual presentations, because the risk is that the audience is not engaged by you and you need to use your voice even more so, otherwise you just become a talking head. Effective use of your voice when public speaking, how to be a better virtual presenter. So to carry on with that theme, what are some mistakes that people make with virtual presenting? One of them, of course, is they don't stop share. Workshops, how to have difficult conversations in Bendigo, July the 14th. We're looking forward as a Perth-based organisation to going back to Bendigo, winning presentation skills in Bendigo, and Violet and Kyla Morrison, my wife Violet and Kyla, will be running Real Leadership for Women. This is that famous masterclass, 2-day masterclass. It's an 8-week program, lots of self-paced learning, but the 2-day immersion, November 14 and 15. Please send me any comments, any feedback. You know how to reach me. Got my mobile, my email. Be happy to answer further questions. Remember, PowerPoint is a valuable audiovisual aid. Don't do death by PowerPoint. Don't have noisy slides. Use graphics and images. And as always, the magic of the B key enables you, not the beekeeper, the B key, to remove the visual aid. You're now looking at me, and I'm going to say goodbye. Remember, what you've got to say matters. Use your voice to make the change, to make the influence, to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time. Thank you.